On my sister's wedding day, I handed her a gift that looked like forgiveness, but was actually a ticking time bomb, meticulously designed to detonate her entire world. Before we dive into the secret I've carried for all these years, please take a second to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and drop a comment below guessing what the final twist will be. Now, where were we? For 28 years, my identity was forged in the quiet pressure of being the good one. I was the good daughter, the reliable sister, the steady friend, the silent architect of a meticulously ordered life. My world was a tower I had built brick by patient brick, with sound choices and unspoken sacrifices. I had a career I was proud of as a senior graphic designer, a small but beautiful apartment downtown that I'd furnished with pieces I'd saved for months, each one a testament to my patience. And I had Mark, with his easy smile and a comforting presence that made the future feel not just possible, but solid, like the very ground beneath our feet. We had been together for 5 years, a slow and steady courtship that felt more like a partnership than a flash-fire romance. Our love wasn't a bonfire, it was a hearth, a constant, gentle warmth that I had built my life around. So when he got down on one knee, under the soft, hazy glow of string lights in our favorite park, the one where we had our third date and shared our first true secrets, it wasn't a shock. It was the destination we had been patiently walking toward all along. My sister, Clara, is 2 years younger than me, but in life experience, it always felt like a decade. Growing up, she was a vibrant, chaotic whirlwind to my quiet predictability, where I would meticulously draw inside the lines of my coloring books, creating perfect, shaded landscapes. Clara would grab the biggest brush she could find and paint right over them, splashing violent, beautiful color onto the table, the floor, and herself. Our parents didn't call it recklessness, they called her spirited. I just called her exhausting. But she was my sister, my blood, and that title came with a lifetime of unspoken obligations. I loved her. I defended her from schoolyard bullies and her own catastrophically bad decisions, and I cleaned up her messes, both the literal ones, like the trail of clothes and half-empty mugs she left in her wake, and the metaphorical ones, which were far more frequent and far more damaging. When she needed money for a deposit she'd lost on an apartment she trashed, I lent it from my own savings, knowing with a weary certainty I'd never see it again. When she dropped out of college after a single semester, claiming it was stifling her creativity, I let her crash on my tiny couch for 6 long months, living amidst her chaos until she found her footing again. I was her ever-present safety net, and it never once occurred to me that she'd be the one to light the whole thing on fire. Mark and I were deep in the joyful, stressful whirlwind of wedding planning. Every detail felt like a brush stroke on the canvas of our shared future. We'd found the perfect venue, a restored barn with vast, rolling fields that caught the golden hour light in a way that felt cinematic, almost sacred. I remember the day we found it, how Mark grabbed my hand and spun me around in the middle of that empty, sun-drenched field, promising me a lifetime of dances just like this. I'd found my dress after trying on at least 50 others, a simple, elegant A-line gown that made me feel more like myself than anything I'd ever worn. The invitations, which I'd spent weeks designing myself, a delicate watercolor of the barn at sunset, were printed and stacked neatly on my dining table, ready to be sent. Mark wasn't just my fiancé, he was my partner in every sense of the word. We were a team, or so I believed. He had this grand vision, a dream he'd been nursing for years, of starting his own boutique marketing agency. He would talk for hours about disrupting the industry and building a new paradigm, his eyes shining with an ambition I found intoxicating. All he needed, he said, was the startup capital to get it off the ground. He had the vision, the passion, but not the funds. I was his biggest believer, his most ardent cheerleader. I told him that after the wedding, we would pool our savings, every dollar I'd carefully put away for a decade, and we would make his dream our reality. His success would be my success. Our success. The first crack in my perfect world appeared 3 months before the wedding. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like a hairline fracture in a mirror that you can only see if you catch the light just right. Mark started having more and more late nights at the office. Dinners were canceled with a quick, apologetic text. Swamped, babe. Rain check. At the same time, Clara, who was supposedly living with a friend across town after another dramatic falling out with a roommate, began spending an inordinate amount of time at our apartment. Her excuses were always plausible on their own. She'd stop by when I was at work to use the good Wi-Fi for her endless online job applications or to do laundry because her friend's machine was supposedly broken. I'd come home from a long day, exhausted, to find her on my couch, feet propped up on my coffee table, sharing a bottle of wine and laughing with Mark. They had always gotten along, a fact I'd once been so happy about. It was important to me that my sister and my future husband liked each other. But now, their shared laughter felt different. It felt exclusionary, laced with an intimacy that felt private. It was full of inside jokes I was never a part of, punctuated by knowing glances that would stop the second I entered the room. I'd ask what was so funny and they'd just exchange a look and say, "Oh, nothing, just a silly work thing," or "You had to be there." I told myself I was being paranoid, that the mounting wedding stress was making me see ghosts where there were none. I was the good sister, the trusting fiancé. Jealousy was not an emotion I allowed myself to feel. It was messy, irrational, and beneath me. The discovery wasn't a big, dramatic scene. There was no walking in on them, no tearful, gut-wrenching confession. It was colder, quieter, and 1,000 times more insulting for its silence. I had been on a work trip to Chicago for 3 days, a high-pressure project that had me working 18-hour days. I finally managed to finish everything ahead of schedule and caught an earlier flight home, my heart thrumming with excitement at the thought of surprising Mark. I'd even bought him a rare vinyl record he'd been searching for, a small token of my love. I pictured his face, the way his eyes would light up, and the quiet, comfortable evening we would have together before the wedding madness resumed. I walked into the apartment, my suitcase rolling softly behind me on the hardwood floor. The space was empty, unnervingly silent, but his laptop was on the kitchen counter, left open and awake. As I set my purse down, the screen lit up with a new message notification from a chat app. It was from Clara, and the words on the screen made the air leave my lungs in a single, silent gasp. He's telling her tonight. "Don't worry, we'll be together soon. Just like we planned." The world didn't just crack, it shattered into a million unfixable pieces. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply sank to the cold tile of the kitchen floor, my suitcase still standing by the door like a visitor from a life that no longer existed. The record I'd so carefully chosen for him slid out of my bag and rested on the floor beside me, a useless, pathetic disc. With nothing but the low, indifferent hum of the refrigerator for company, I replayed everything. Every late night, every canceled dinner, every time I came home to find them together, their sudden silence, their shared, secret smiles, every shared glance I had dismissed as sisterly in-law bonding, every inside joke I wasn't a part of. This wasn't a messy, accidental affair. This was a coup, a calculated, deliberate campaign of deception waged against me in my own home, on my own couch, by the two people I trusted most in the entire world. This was planned. They had planned this. When Mark finally came home, whistling, carrying a bag of takeout from my favorite Thai place, the peace offering, I now realized, he stopped dead in the doorway when he saw me on the floor, his laptop still open on the counter. He didn't have to ask. He saw the annihilation on my face. His excuses were a pathetic, stumbling cascade of cliches. "It just happened. I didn't want to hurt you. I was going to tell you tonight." And then, the one that finally broke me. She makes me feel alive. He never once said he was sorry for the betrayal, he only justified it. Then he delivered the cruelest line of all. A line so devoid of empathy it was almost comical in its narcissism. "This isn't about you." Clara's betrayal was, if possible, even worse. She didn't have the courage to face me. I received a text message an hour after Mark left for good, his clothes hastily thrown into a duffel bag. "I'm sorry, but I can't help who I love. He loves me. We're going to be together." They didn't waste any time twisting the knife. A month later, their engagement was announced on social media with a gushing post and a photo of a diamond ring far larger and more ostentatious than the one Mark had given me. 2 months after that, a thick, offensively opulent ivory invitation arrived in my mailbox. My own name and address were written in a calligrapher's elegant script, a cruel parody of the invitations I had designed, which were still sitting in a box in my closet like a tombstone for a dead future. My stomach churned as I held the heavy cardstock. They were getting married at a lavish vineyard, one Mark and I had toured and considered before deciding it was too expensive. They were getting married on a date just a few weeks after what should have been my wedding day. It was a complete and utter appropriation of the future they'd stolen from me, upgraded and flaunted for the world to see. Tucked inside the main invitation was a small, separate, handwritten note from Clara. 4 little words that were meant to be the final, crushing blow. Come see what true love looks like. That wasn't an invitation, it was a taunt. It was a victory lap. And in that moment, as I stood in my silent apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of a future that would never be, the grief that had been choking me for months finally cooled, hardened, and sharpened into something new. Something cold, clear, and focused resolve. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to scream. And I sure as hell wasn't going to play the part of the jilted, heartbroken victim they had so callously cast me as. They wanted a show. Fine. I would give them one. But this performance was going to be mine, scripted and directed by me, with a finale they would never, ever see coming. With a steady hand, I filled out the RSVP card. Will be attending. For the next several weeks, I became a meticulous planner. My grief was channeled into pure strategy. This couldn't be something petty or obvious, like a glitter bomb or a drunken, screaming scene at the reception. That's what Clara would have done. My revenge had to be elegant, quiet, and complete. It had to be poetic. It had to be a response tailored perfectly to who they really were, greedy, arrogant, and pathologically desperate for the illusion of success. Mark wanted his business, his disruption of the industry. Clara wanted the lifestyle, the status, the envy of others. They had tried to steal my future, so I decided I would give them one of their very own, custom-built on a foundation of lies that I would secretly and beautifully design. I spent a week consulting with a lawyer, a man recommended to me for his expertise in intricate contract law and his utter lack of sentimentality. He had a shark's smile and an artist's appreciation for creative clauses. When I laid out the bare bones of my plan, he leaned back in his expensive leather chair and didn't even flinch. He just nodded slowly, a dangerous glint in his eye. Poetic, he murmured. I like it. The plan we devised was brutally simple in its concept, but the execution had to be flawless. It would be a wedding gift from me to them, disguised as an act of unbelievable grace. An olive branch, so grand it would be the talk of the town, cementing my role as the magnanimous victim and their role as the lucky recipients of my generosity. The gift was a trap, dressed up as a golden ticket. I bought a new dress for the occasion, a deep, luminous emerald green that I knew would make me stand out in their carefully curated sea of champagne and blush pastels. I walked into that sun-drenched vineyard ceremony with my head held high and a placid, unreadable smile on my face. I watched my sister, my little sister, in a voluminous white dress probably paid for with our parents' retirement savings, walk down the aisle toward the man who had whispered promises of forever into my ear just months before in our quiet apartment. They exchanged vows they couldn't possibly mean, their eyes shining not with love, but with a sickeningly triumphant glow that they thought no one else could see. During the reception, in a move of peak audacity, Clara's new mother-in-law cornered me by the bar, gushing about how brave and strong I was to be there, and then insisted I give a toast. All eyes turned to me, 100 pairs of eyes filled with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. I raised my glass. To Mark and Clara, I said, my voice as smooth and cool as glass. I've known them both for a very long time, and I can honestly say they are perfect for each other. I paused, letting the weight of my apparent sincerity sink in, letting the guests nod in pitying admiration for my strength. May you both get everything you truly deserve in this life. People clapped. A few even wiped away tears at my perceived generosity. My own mother looked at me with a mixture of pride and profound heartache. Then, it was time for the gifts. I waited, letting the pile of boxes from other guests grow. Finally, near the end of the night, as the party was winding down, I brought mine forward. It was a large, heavy box, impeccably wrapped in gold paper with an extravagant white silk bow. I presented it to them with a small flourish. I wanted to give you something to truly start your new life together, I said, my voice loud enough for the circle of curious guests to hear. Mark and Clara tore into the wrapping with the greedy, childish excitement of people who believe they have gotten away with everything. Inside, nestled on a bed of white satin, was a single, elegantly framed document. Their expressions flickered from curious to confused to pure, unadulterated ecstasy. The guests crowding around let out a collective gasp. It was a certificate of investment. The document, beautifully designed by yours truly with intricate gold foil and calligraphy, stated that I was gifting them $250,000 to launch their dream marketing agency. Their faces were a portrait of smug, absolute victory. They had won. They hadn't just taken my fiancé, they had just conned me out of my life savings, too. Or so they thought. Clara hugged me, her face buried in my shoulder, producing very convincing, very fake tears. "I can't believe it," she whispered dramatically. "This means you forgive us." I hugged her back, patting her back gently. "Of course," I whispered. "This is your dream. Go live it." In their blind, dizzying arrogance, they didn't look closer. The framed certificate was just for show, a prop for their audience. The real transaction was tied to the thick stack of actual legal documents in a discreet manila envelope at the very bottom of the box, the formation papers and operating agreement for their new LLC. And buried deep within the dense, boring pages of legalese were the teeth of my trap. The money wasn't a gift. It was a high-interest business loan, personally guaranteed by both Mark and Clara, making them individually liable for the full amount. The terms I'd had my lawyer draft gave me a 51% controlling interest in the company and, most importantly, the right to call the entire loan due, with all accrued interest, if the business failed to meet a series of absurdly high, almost impossible profit benchmarks within 18 months. To get the money, all they had to do was sign. And there, in the middle of their wedding reception, surrounded by their friends and family, blinded by the mirage of a $250,000 windfall and the belief in their own untouchable cleverness, they signed every single page without reading a single word. The first year went exactly as I had predicted. They both quit their perfectly good jobs in a blaze of performative glory. They leased a ridiculously expensive office space with floor-to-ceiling glass walls and a panoramic city view they couldn't afford. They bought a new German sports car and put a down payment on a sprawling new house in a gated community, leveraging their successful new business for even more loans from the bank. From a private social media account I created just for the occasion, I watched their ascent. They were playing the part of the city's new power couple entrepreneurs, and they were loving every single second of it, documenting their lavish dinners and weekend getaways for all the world to see. #hustle, #power couple, #building an empire. But a business built on arrogance, run by a man with far more ambition than actual talent, and a woman whose only skill was spending money, is a house of cards in a hurricane. Mark was great at pitching big ideas, but terrible at executing them. He overspent on trivialities like imported Italian espresso machines for the office, underdelivered on promises to clients, and quickly alienated their few starting accounts with his monumental ego. The profit goals I had set in the loan agreement were, of course, utterly impossible to hit. They were designed to be. 18 months to the day after their wedding, I met with my lawyer. He simply raised an eyebrow. I gave a single, slow nod. He sent them a certified letter. The show was over. I was exercising my rights as the primary shareholder and creditor. I was calling in the loan, the entire $250,000, plus all the compounded, accrued interest. Their world imploded with a speed that was almost beautiful to witness. Clara called me, screaming, hysterical. She accused me of setting them up, of being a monster. I just listened calmly to her tirade before saying, "You signed a contract, Clara. You should always read the fine print." They had no money to pay me back. They had spent it all, and more, on a lifestyle they could never sustain. Because they had signed personal guarantees, they were both on the hook for every last cent. Their company, now a worthless husk, was liquidated. I took its only real assets as a small down payment, the high-end computers, the designer office furniture, and whatever was left in their business bank account, which was laughably little. They had to declare personal bankruptcy. They lost the house. The bank repossessed the car. They lost every single shred of the successful, enviable image they had built on my back. And their marriage, a union forged not in love but in the fires of betrayal and greed, couldn't survive the crushing weight of spectacular failure and suffocating debt. The last I heard, they're living in a tiny, rented apartment on the grim edge of town, spending their days and nights screaming at each other about whose fault it all was. Clara's Instagram, once a meticulously curated feed of their luxury life, went completely silent. And now, for the secret I've carried all this time, the final piece of the puzzle, the twist that makes this more than just revenge. The $250,000 wasn't my life savings. It was money our father had given to me, in secret, a few years before he passed away. It was Clara's inheritance. He knew her, you see. He knew she was a whirlwind of chaos and bad decisions, and he worried she'd burn through any money he left her in a matter of months. So he entrusted it to me, the good daughter, to hold for her, to give to her when she was older, more responsible, or in a moment of true need. I used the very safety net my father created for her as the weapon to destroy her. I gave her exactly what our father asked me to, her inheritance, at a moment of what she believed was true need. I just attached terms and conditions. As for me, I walked away and never looked back. That money was never mine to begin with, only mine to leverage. I moved to a new city, started my own freelance design business, my own dream, on my own terms, and I built a quiet, peaceful, and profoundly happy life. The revenge wasn't truly in watching them lose everything. It was in the act of building my own happiness from the ashes of the life they tried to burn down. I eventually found a love that is built on honesty and mutual respect, not on lies and stolen futures. It was in proving that a life well lived, a life built on your own integrity, is something no one can ever truly steal from you. They thought they were taking my future, but in the end, the only future they obliterated was their own. If this story left you speechless, smash that like button right now. Tell me in the comments, was justice served, or did I go too far? And don't forget to subscribe, you won't want to miss next week's chilling confession.